Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of your PCM Hockey Podcast. I am Payton, your host, and today I am joined by Mark Jones and Kelvin Hector as we have a great episode ahead of you guys. As we're recording this of the day of Wednesday, June 2nd. You guys will be seeing this on Thursday, so you guys will probably already know what happened to Mark Scheifele. Maybe we won't know what will happen, but we just seen just a few hours ago, Mark Scheifele absolutely nailed Jake Evans with his huge charging hit across the ice, which is what we're going to start the entire episode off with, is talking about this Mark Scheifele hit. Now, we're probably not going to get into it too deep. We're going to go off. I heard Kelvin wants to go on a little bit of a rant, so we're definitely going to let him do that. But we also got the draft lottery talk, and we're also going to talk about the second round, give us our now late on predictions in the second round. So I'll throw it over to Kelvin because I know he's ready to go to talk about this Mark Scheifele situation. And also, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. Got my COVID vaccine shot number 1 today, so that's good. Kind of celebrating that on the path
Awesome.
to getting back to normal. Hopefully, enough people get their vaccines and we can have a fun summer ahead of us and get fans back in the seats come fall. There's already some fans in the seats for certain teams. It looks like Boston and Carolina have almost completely full barns, but here in Canada, different story. Just a few hundred allowed into each game, but anyway, speaking of fans getting into games, there's 500 tonight in Winnipeg, and I just feel horrible for what they had to see at the end of the game from their own player, Mike Scheifele. Just and normally I wouldn't be watching a game that late when it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
done. Like they made it interesting. Winnipeg tried a little too late though because they were down. What was it, 3-1, and then they made it 3-2.
Yeah.
Montreal go up again, so it was 4-2, then 4-3, like late in the game. I'm like, okay, well, Montreal's probably going to pop another empty netter. And I normally tune out by then because Vegas and Colorado was just starting. So I was like, okay, I'll flip over the other game, but I didn't. And what I saw was just horrific. Like, there's no need for this in the game. I advocate for if there's like a fast hit and it looks dirty because it's like just fast and everything. It was on an empty freaking net goal. Like
Yeah.
he's just putting the puck in to seal the game, and Scheifele obviously was on a mission to not let that happen, but he didn't even play the puck. He just goes straight for the
Mm-hmm.
body. You can argue it was clean, not clean, whatever, but just the intent in general was it definitely wasn't to stop the goal. It was to hit the player and take him off the puck. Never was the play, I'm going to prevent him from scoring. It was just, let's just see how hard I can hit him. Like, I'm sure Scheifele is regretting it now because
Oh
he's,
yeah.
like, in my opinion, he's going to get suspended. I don't think it's just going to be a stupid little $5,000 fine. I sure hope it isn't, or all hell's going to break loose. George Peros has already been in hot water before for his decisions, especially that Tom Wilson situation.
Yep.
And then a similar situation with Reeves, and they suspend Reeves. So I'm sure Reeves wasn't too freaking happy about that, but Scheifele deserves to be suspended. Now, I'm ballparking it between a 2 to 4 game suspension. And why I think that is just because Scheifele doesn't have a history. That's why it just was like, what the hell just happened? What did I just see? Did Scheifele literally just do that? Like, I was so shocked. And that's how the game basically ended because there was only like 40 seconds left on the clock. Um, yeah, I hopefully he gets suspended, and I hope Evans is okay because that looks almost it looked just as horrific as Tavares. I mean, at least Evans stayed on the ice. Like when
Mm-hmm.
Tavares tried to get up on his knees and then kind of buckled backwards, that was a little horrifying. But
Mm-hmm.
Evans was out cold from the moment Scheifele made contact with him. I know people were like, "Oh, it was when he flipped over and hit his head on the ice." No, it looked like the moment Scheifele made contact with Evans, just that momentum going into his body was enough to knock him out. Like that's like getting punched by like I don't know, Floyd Mayweather or like Conor McGregor. You're gonna be knocked out the moment their impact hits. Like it's not even
Mm-hmm.
once you hit the floor you're out. You're out at the moment of impact. So I hope Evans is okay, and I really hope Scheifele gets a suspension. I know based on history, it's probably only gonna be a couple games, but if it's like 4 games, I'll be glad.
Yeah, he was pretty frustrated throughout the game. He was kind of getting bullied around by the Canadians, which you see Matthews didn't get phased by it, but Matthews didn't score any goals, and same thing was happening to Scheifele. He was getting pushed around in this game. Sherratt was hand washing him, and then he took that penalty, went out there, he was back checking hard, and then he absolutely smoked Jake Evans. He went from all the way from his from Carey Price all the way down to the other side of the ice and did not stop at all and just fully leveled Jake Evans. I hope for a speedy recovery for the guy because that was absolutely horrendous. And I'd even watched the end of the game. I tuned it out once. I was like, 4-3. Winnipeg doesn't look like they're going to win this game. Mostly looks like Montreal is going to win this game. We'll go grab a snack and tune into the Golden Knights and Avalanche game. And then you text me, Calvin. I'm like, what was this dirty hit by Scheifele? I watched and I was in disgust because, I'm a Winnipeg. My second favorite team is Winnipeg Jets. I'm a real big fan of Scheifele, but what he did there is inexcusable and it's a real dirty hit. You can't be doing that, especially on an empty net play where you just got to let it go. You can't smoke a guy like that when he's in a vulnerable state, just trying to bury into the back of the net. And you skate all the way down the ice. It was a dirty hit. And, I'll send it over to Mark. And how's your day going? And you want to give us a little bit more input into the conversation, bud?
Well, first of all, since we're talking very quickly about COVID vaccines, yes, up here where I am in Northeast BC, they are they open it up to everybody age-wise. So they basically said now I can get the second vaccine. I think I'm about 3 weeks away from my second dose, so that'll be, I guess, just over the 8 weeks or whatever. So that's good, and yeah, hopefully, like Calvin said, back to some kind of normal, and that'll be good. As far as the Scheifele hit, yeah, it was only through you that after you had been told by Calvin, then you told me, and I hadn't watched the game tonight, to be honest. I mean, I haven't really put myself fully into it. I probably watched part of the Toronto, Montreal series, various parts. So that hit, I watched it back several times on the replay, and I just can't see any way even a reasonable person would say, okay, like objectively, that Scheifele doesn't get suspended. I just can't see. And I kind of, too, I'm torn on this series. I mean, one Canadian team will come out of this, obviously. Amazing math that I did there. Two Canadian teams, take away one will come away. Yeah, it's just amazing how I come up with this. But anyways, the point is just I kind of was torn who I would like to see win in this series. I'm kind of looking at it, which team has the best chance to basically take it all the way. And I'm kind of starting to think it could be Montreal just because of their cup experience there. And Winnipeg, I've certainly got turned off there collectively on the team seeing that hit. It's just unacceptable. There's no excuse for that. And I don't see, and of course, Scheifele's trying to, the way I read it is he's trying to look all innocent there after the fact. But I just hope the best for, I'm trying to remember who you said it was for Montreal.
Oh, Jake Evans.
Yeah, I hope he's okay. I saw him get wheeled off, I guess, on, was it not? He got wheeled off on the stretcher. So
he was stretchered out.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything else about where he stands in that. So
I'm sure,
I just think it's unacceptable.
I'm sure we'll get an update as they did with Tavares. Like, it was pretty quick, like a couple hours. Like, I'm sure Evans is in hospital in Winnipeg right now, and they'll update him. I'm really interested in what Paul Maurice is going to say when asked about it. The funny thing is, I've been going through my social media because, of course, it's all over social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. There's videos of it. There's the aftermath of it. There's a lot of reaction from the Montreal players, but I have seen very little of actual like Winnipeg Jets players' reactions or even their coaching staff. So it's interesting to see what will come out of it in the next 24 hours, especially with all the talk about what will happen between the league and Scheifele.
Well, here if I can jump in and quote Martin Biron on Twitter, if that's okay here. Martin Biron, 43. Quote, I watched the Scheifele hit on Evans from all angles and all speeds. Such a dangerous hit with only purpose to hurt a player. Scheifele is a great player, but a hit like that shouldn't be part of the game. I would think this will be an in-person Zoom hearing going 5+ at least, whatever the 5+ is referring to. So,
and Yeah, Scheifele has never done anything like this. Like we were talking about, he's not really a dirty player. And afterwards, I don't think it was like what you were saying there a while ago that it was like he was begging for innocence. I think it was a play that was emotional. If we've all played hockey, and I've been in emotional situations where I was to do something dumb slash somebody get a dumb penalty, whatever it may be, or getting into a fight, right? And then you notice afterwards that like you just made probably one of the worst decisions you could ever make. And I think Scheifele knew, because I was seeing some extra footage, and you could see Scheifele in the tunnel kind of like circle back, and you could show that you could see that there was a little bit of that like you know can't even think of the word. I don't know why. It's right on the tip of the tongue. My Lord, he's just, not proud of himself and not happy with what he did there. And I think he's definitely going to get a couple games. He has to. It's also respect to Nikolai Ehlers as well. If you guys haven't seen the photo of him practically walling the entire scrum behind him while Jake Evans is on the ground, huge respect to Nikolai Ehlers, or already one of my favorite wingers in the NHL, has just become one of my favorites just by doing that, because I absolutely hate scrums. Right after you see a player just get absolutely laid out on the ice and he's knocked out, and you see everyone dog piling that player, and everyone's kicking the player on the ice that's down. Who knows what's happening to him? And everyone's going in there trying to take off the other guy's head. Think before you go in there and try not to rip somebody's head off. You got to protect your teammates and not try to kill them in the process of trying to, take out somebody else. And Nikolai Ehlers did a great job of making sure Jake Evans was safe and didn't get any kicks in the face or anything like that. So respect to him in that. And also hope Jake Evans has a speedy recovery. I hope he's all right. And hopefully we'll be able to see some updates here in the next couple hours or tomorrow on how is he all going. Anyways, so we'll change the topic to kind of the first round, which the first round finished up a while ago. We seen the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Montreal Canadiens finish not that long ago, and wow, what do I say about that? Montreal beats Toronto. Isn't that amazing? Mark, I'll begin with you. Were you surprised about Montreal being the Toronto Maple Leafs, or were you expecting this?
Well, I'm gonna put it this way. I was torn, but I did outright predict Toronto taking the series because I just figured, okay, I mean, they've got to find a way to do it. Am I surprised that Montreal did it? Really, given the way Montreal started the season, given there's a lot of things in that lineup that I liked. I at one point was leaning to thinking, you know what, maybe they're going to somehow pull this thing out. But so I guess I'm sound like I'm sitting on the fence, but I guess I'm not completely surprised. Like, it's not like you're talking about, if you look it up, let's just say somehow the 1993 San Jose Sharks or 94 San Jose Sharks sneaking in to or whatever, they get in the playoffs and almost taking out, I think they did take out Detroit, or they did something like that. That would kind of be an upset. Montreal taking out Toronto, I'm not going to say it's an upset, but given that it was a 3-1 series lead and Toronto just perennially has this history, I mean, heck, they blew that game, was it once or twice? They've blown a couple games against Boston late and Boston comes back and wins the series in the playoffs. So it seems to be somehow their snake bit. But overall, if I was probably betting money, I would have said Toronto was going to win that series. But now, Montreal had the capability. It's not a huge surprise. I just thought somehow Toronto was going to get it done. And dare I mention it, similar to another series that took place, although it went down in 4 games. But we won't bring that up. Edmonton, sorry, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Winnipeg, that was the total upset too, which we will get to that one here in a bit as well. But yeah, that was, I watched the last game and Toronto just seemed so defeated. They just did not play. They got outcoached somehow, but Ducharme somehow outcoached Sheldon Keefe,
Yeah.
which was absolutely amazing to see, because Keefe has been brought up as the next big thing in the NHL, and he totally got outcoached by a guy that I'm not even a big fan of in Ducharme, but, somehow the Canadiens are able to play the way that they're playing right now, and they're built for the playoffs, and they're playing like that right now, especially, pulling away with game one as well. And this was an upset, without a doubt. In my opinion, it was, because the Toronto Maple Leafs, they were up 3-1. This was their series to take. They had the best record in the North. They actually played pretty well against the Canadiens most of the season. This was this year to actually finally win a playoff round and maybe go deep. And once again, they failed to do anything. They lose in the first round, and it's devastating. The organization, I mean, the amount of Leafs fans that were very, very upset yesterday. I'm pretty sure a lot of them got even more upset when Oilers fans and a ton of other fans were making fun of them for their loss. Probably just dug more salt into some of their wounds. But anyways, I'll send this over to Calvin on his thoughts, because honestly, all I do now is laugh at the Leafs. That's all I do.
So, talking about Leafs and Habs, in hindsight, okay, yeah, I can say I was thinking I should have taken the Habs, but my thought process going into that series was the only way the Habs are going to win is if Carey Price showed up as Carey Price. And the fact that he was missing the tail end of the season due to a concussion and had to do an AHL stint, and it didn't even look good in his AHL stint. He had a couple goals on like 9 shots or something like that. I was like, oh goodness, like Carey Price is not going to be 100% coming into the series, and I thought Toronto would take full advantage of that. But if you really look at it, after Game 3, I think they awoke the sleeping beast that is Carey Price, and he was a huge factor in Montreal able to winning that series in 7 games, and then he proved it again tonight. Like, Winnipeg was very well rested, Montreal's tired, and Carey Price was able to make a bunch of amazing saves that he needed to make tonight for Montreal to get the win. So in hindsight, I would have taken the Habs. I actually had that, but the reason I didn't was I thought Carey Price isn't going to be Carey Price. He's going to be more sluggish, and obviously that backfired on me because my whole Canadian North Division brackets destroyed. The rest of them are fine, but and you know what? I've learned too many stupid times that I just need to go with my gut instinct, and I always go against my gut instinct. But my gut instinct would have told me don't pick Edmonton because you're a Flames fan, and should have picked Montreal because they have Carey Price behind them, compared to Toronto with Jack Campbell, who had no playoff experience. So it's just and that's what I was saying with you, Payton, when we were doing our round 1 brackets. I said I went a lot based on goaltending, and I should have stuck with that, and it backfired.
Yeah, you should have stuck with it more, because the best goalies in the Canadian Division 1 in Hellebuck and Carey Price, which, I don't have very much things to say about the Edmonton Oilers getting swept. If you guys want to go and see all my thoughts, especially after the loss, because I practically recorded myself after the loss, you can go check out my Payton on the radio channel. I have like a full episode on the OGR on that entire game and just my breakdown of it, which I was already defeated pretty much after that game. I already knew what was going to happen, and it sucked, but congrats on Winnipeg. So let's get into the second round predictions. I know it's already kind of begun. We already have the game 1 between the Canadiens and the Jets. Of course, the Canadiens are leading 1-0. Avalanche and the Knights are right now on. They're tied at 2. But the Avalanche are leading the series 1-0. And then also Lightning are leading the series 2-0. And the Bruins in New York are tied at 1. Which, well, why not start with the Boston Bruins versus the New York Islanders? Honestly, I predicted this one to go to the Boston Bruins. I think in 6 I predicted this one to go. New York Islanders are going to be a tough team no matter which way you put it. Varlamov is going to be good, but what we've seen from the past 2 games is that the Boston Bruins offense has been pretty lethal against the New York Islanders. Varlamov did great. He had a rough start to the game, but after that, he really started to step up for the Islanders. Was a big goalie for them. But I still see the Boston Bruins pulling away in that series in 6. Just the Boston Bruins just look like a whole nother beast this year, especially coming into the playoffs. They look like a whole new team, eh? And I'll send this one off to Calvin. He could start off with your predictions for the Boston and New York.
And I agree with you. Of course, when I filled out my bracket, once you get to the second round, it doesn't ask you games. But if I had to pick, I think this one could go to 7. I think it very likely could, especially for the games now shifting to New York. Like, You think Boston was a wild crowd? Just wait till they get some people in Nassau Coliseum where it's basically right on
Oh
top of the
yeah,
ice. Like it's not a
a
big
couple,
barn. It's an old
they
barn
already.
too.
I think they already had a couple of fans in there for a couple of the Pittsburgh games, and they were loud. Like they were chanting, "We want Boston."
Yep.
The entire third period. It was rowdy. So I'm definitely excited for game 3 and 4 to see how good Nassau Coliseum will be.
Yeah, so I do have Boston winning, but I think the series could go to game 7 and it'll have to go back to Boston where their fans are absolutely crazy. But I mean, I think New York and Boston are pretty close for how crazy their fans are. They're both out east. So, um, yeah, I think that series will be a tight one, as proven by game 2 where it had to go to overtime. Boston had to come back from a deficit and then just silly turnover and accidental off the skate and freed up one of the, I forget which Islanders player it was, but he capitalized when he needed to. So that's why the series is tied.
Mm-hmm. Mark, I'll send it over to you.
Well, yeah, and just a sort of a question to you guys: are they playing? I know they've done it before. Are they playing some games at Nassau County, or are they playing them on the Barclays Center?
I think all
No,
their games are at Nassau.
yeah. So what they're doing is it was kind of like they were going between two buildings, I'm pretty sure, and then they went back to Nassau Coliseum, and then they're getting a new arena next year. I think they're getting a brand new arena because they've been having some problems getting arenas and stuff like that for the Islanders until, of course, this upcoming
Okay.
season when they're getting their new arena here.
Okay. So with that said, my prediction is going to be, again, it's one of these ones that's torn because some of these matchups, they're not necessarily slam dunks and just, but I just get this feeling that, Boston on paper and all that should be the ones that get it done. But I just get this feeling like there's enough edge there with the Islanders that I think certainly if they can, if it's at 1-1 right now, I mean, if this sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, but I mean, I think if it gets to 7, I think the Islanders can pull the upset. If it becomes something like, I mean, that's almost like saying, oh, the team that scores the most goals wins. Oh, really, Mark? But what I'm saying is that if at 1-1 right now, I think if Boston gets up 3-1, let's just say, they've got the series. If however it gets down to like, okay, you get to a game 6, however it happens, if the Islanders get up 3-2, and then it becomes a game 7 going back to Boston, even with the Boston forcing the game 7. I just think it's going to be the Islanders. So that's kind of the way I'm going to put it. And I would say that just because I think there's going to be a step up where the Islanders now, they learned last year. I forget who they fell to in the playoffs. It might have been Tampa. I'm trying to remember who they fell to there, but I just think that they're going to find a way to finish Boston, and I just think, like I say, the longer it goes, it favors the Islanders.
Yeah, so I mean that series can honestly go anywhere. If the Islanders can keep, doing what Barry Trotz always does and get into that great coaching that system that they got going there on the Islanders, they could almost beat any team. But I feel like the Bruins are pretty powerful. We'll see how that series keeps going on. It's a series tied at 1. We should be seeing the game by the time we upload this podcast. You guys will probably be able to watch the game later on in the afternoon. So make sure to tune into that one because it should be a good game. Which also tomorrow, or I guess by the time you're watching this today, you'll be also watching the Carolina versus Tampa Bay Lightning game, which I feel like this series is going to be going to probably 7 games without a doubt. I had Carolina in this series winning 7 just because I love Carolina so much this year. They're such a great team, so powerful the way that they play. But right now, Lightning, they look pretty good as well. They've been looking pretty powerful in the past 2 games. Now, I mean, these past 2 games have been tight. I mean, it's been 1-goal games between Tampa and Carolina, and it's been a rough goal that Nedeljkovic let in, and Vasilevsky's been such a huge game changer in this series. I feel like goaltending is definitely going to be the name of the game in this playoffs, and it really seems to be that way, especially for the Tampa Bay Lightning with a great goaltender, Vasilevsky, right now, who's just been outperforming in Nedeljkovic, and not even saying anything wrong about Nedeljkovic. Like, he's been playing fantastic, but Vasilevsky is just absolutely the better goalie right now, and he's having a beast of a playoffs trying to pick up the Tampa Bay and put them back in another Stanley Cup Finals, maybe go back to back. Now, not just Vasilevsky, who's been doing great. There's been so many other. Kucherov, he's been leading the league in points. Brain points been amazing, and so many more. I mean, just Tampa Bay's been a great team since coming back in and having like $95 million in cap in this playoffs or something like that was just absolutely crazy. Anyways, I'll hand it over to Mark on his predictions on the Carolina Tampa Bay series.
Yeah, again, I mean, both those teams are so good. It's not like it's like, you're dealing with a traditional, like, like one really strong and one, like just a long shot. But I think on this one, I'm going to go with Tampa, and the reason is that they've paid their dues so much, and they win the cup last year. I just feel that they're still rolling along, and they had the hard series. It only went 6 games, but it could easily have gone 7 against their state rival in the Panthers. I just feel that somehow, I mean, I don't think Carolina's just going to lay down, and I mean they've all been close. Well, the 2 games have been both close. I think the same score. I just feel Tampa's got just enough more going for them that even if it's a 1-goal win, they're going to win this. They're going to put together another 2 wins and win this series.
Kelvin, I'll send it over. Oh, did you do your predictions? You picked Tampa Bay to win, and Kelvin, what's your predictions on this series?
Yeah, I have Tampa winning against Carolina. I think you're a little cuckoo for thinking it's going to go 7 games. Yeah, they've been close games, but I think just the fact that Tampa was able to, I don't want to say cheat the system, but like they played the NHL rulebook system on cap space and having long-term injury reserve just right so that they can bring in Kucherov back for the playoffs just to add to it. And think about it. I mean, they didn't win their division, but like for finishing 3rd place without Kucherov, and Stamkos was injured for the tail end of the season, like think about it. They had like 2 of their star players out injured, and they still made the playoffs. And then they're able to bring them back for playoffs. Like it's just a deadly. I don't know what word I'm trying to find here, but just a deadly combination to have. And I do think they're going to go deep in the playoffs. Like I'm jumping a little ahead here, but I do have Tampa Bay making it to the Stanley Cup Finals for a 2nd year in a row. I don't have them winning, but that's for another time. So yeah, I think they're going to kind of sweep through Carolina. I think at the most it maybe goes 6 games because I know Carolina has quite a rowdy. Oh no, sorry, the first 2 games were in Carolina. What am I talking about? They're going back to Tampa for the next 2 games. Yeah, so it could very well. I don't want to say sweep. I hate sweeps. Like it's no fun. Like come on, make it a little more entertaining. But at the most I think it'll go 6 games. But like my prediction, I say 5.
Yeah, and the thing is, in game 2, Carolina really was punishing the Tampa Bay Lightning. They had 70.5% in the deserve to win meter. They were dominating analytically. They were dominating on shots. Just the biggest thing was Vasilevsky was a stone wall, and Carolina needs to figure out how to get past them and to figure how to put goals against them. So we'll jump into the next series, Colorado versus the Vegas Golden Knights, which this series has been pretty exciting. Right now, the recording of this podcast are right now tied at 2 with about 10 minutes left. Who knows if that game's going to be going into overtime, but probably by the time this podcast is done recording, I'm definitely going to be watching the game without a doubt if it's still on. But this series already was pretty fun. I mean, we've seen a domination in the first game, 7-1 by Colorado, which honestly, I already think that the Colorado Avalanche are going to win this series. I don't know if it's going to be in smashing. I don't know if it's going to be 6 games. I don't know if it's going to be 7 games because this series could go anywhere. If Colorado plays the way that they did in game 1, then without a doubt, this team could cakewalk through the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, the Vegas Golden Knights were tired. They are now well rested and ready to go throughout this series, so we'll see how they do. I think this series will probably go to 6, but it's definitely going to go in Colorado's favor. Without a doubt. Just I think the way that Colorado's been playing, especially with Grubauer and McKinnon, Rantanen, and just so many more McCarr and Taves, and just so many good players there in Colorado. It's just an amazing team that deserves to win the Cup this year and deserves to go on to the Stanley Cup Finals. But I'll send it over to Kelvin on his predictions on this series.
Well, I agree with you that Colorado's going to win, but like I'm kind of teeter-tottering now because after watching, well, they're in the third period now, but watching most of the game, they're playing Marc-Andre Fleury again. Like the asterisk on game one was that it was the name slipping my head right now. Leonard.
Yeah,
Leonard.
Leonard.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Leonard played game one for Vegas. He's not even dressed tonight. That says something. And now here we got Fleury with a well-rested Vegas team, and it's been a tightly played game. Yeah, Colorado was fast out of the gates to get the first goal on the board, but it's tied 2-2 late in the third, so it's really anyone's game for the taking. And Marc-Andre Fleury has been making some pretty decent saves, and on the other end, Grubauer has been making some great saves. So again, I'm all for goaltending. I love goaltending. I have a cousin who's a goalie, so of course I might be a little favored in that sense. I want him to, go to the NHL one day. Actually, shout out to my cousin. He just committed to Division I college hockey in the States.
Awesome.
So I'm proud of him for doing that. Hopefully he can work his way up the ladder, and maybe we'll see his name in the draft a few years from now. But
that'd be pretty cool.
A lot, but hopefully he's a big boy. He's 6'8", so
Ooh,
he's got the size. He's got the size. That's going for him. But anyways, getting back on track, I do think Colorado will win the series. I have them winning the Cup, so I hope they win the series. Otherwise, my bracket is just broken. So, but for that fact, I think Colorado just has the speed. I think they can outlast Vegas. I think Vegas is more of a grit team rather than a speed team. But I think Colorado's speed is just too much, and it's just going to tire out Vegas. So I think maybe 6 games, Colorado takes it.
Oh yeah. Calvin or Mark, your predictions.
I'm gonna say Colorado. I just think there's something not quite the same as Vegas a few years back, and I just think Colorado. I've been impressed. I hadn't really followed them that closely, and they're just. The only analogy I can or comparison I can draw is what they looked like maybe a little bit in 2000, 2001, but 96 when they won their first cup. And of course, it was the year of the irony, sort of a kick in the teeth to Quebec fans as the year they lose the team. The next year, the former team wins in their new city. But I just think they're rolling along now, and I just think they're certainly a favorite to make it to the final, and so I'm obviously to do that. I'm saying they're going to take out Vegas.
Now, since we're almost getting near the end of the episode, we got still some stuff to wrap up on. We'll quickly do our quick predictions on the Winnipeg-Montreal series since we already talked about it a bit. This one was pretty tough. I don't want to begin with this one, though. I'll send it over to Kelvin, and he can start on his predictions between the Winnipeg and Montreal series.
Well, I wish I hadn't watched game one, because if I hadn't watched game one, I'd say, oh, yeah, Winnipeg's got this in 5 games. Just like I said, Toronto had it in 5 games. With Carey Price playing the way he is, and now the team's Montreal's going to have a fire under their ass to play for Evans after the way Scheifele just domed him at the end there. So, and Winnipeg, Hellebuck looked kind of average. He was making some good saves, but Montreal was able to beat him when they needed to. Stahl has been playing really well for Montreal. He's showing why he was a good acquisition at the trade deadline, and showing why he has so much playoff experience and how that really helps a younger team. And then on that side, the younger players, I had a hard time saying this last time. It's Konkaniemi, right?
Konkaniemi, I think it is.
Konkaniemi.
Welcome to the tongue twister hour, where we try and pronounce players' last names.
Yep.
Anyways, but him and Caulfield, though, just add the extra speed. And Caulfield is trying to pull off some nice moves. He had a couple good
You're
opportunities.
even forgetting the other good one. Nick Suzuki has also just been flying around, especially in that game against the Jets. He was all over the place.
And since they're younger, it's hard to game plan as to how you're going to defend them because you don't know what their tendencies are. That kind of goes back to how Johnny Gaudreau had that one season where he had over 100 points. Well, it's because he was a younger player still, and he hadn't blown up like that yet. So a lot of teams didn't know how the hell to defend against him. And I think that's proving in Montreal's favor in this series and in last series as well. It's hard to predict what they're going to do because you haven't seen how they play in the National Hockey League, especially in playoffs. So my prediction, I want to say Winnipeg still, but I'm kind of on the.
Well, with Scheifele out,
I'm on the Canadiens bandwagon. I'm on the Canadiens bandwagon. I think the Canadiens can do it, and I think they can do it in 6.
Oh, 6. Mark, what you thinking?
I'm just side note. I'm just looking at Kotkaniemi. Was their third pick, 3 years or third overall 3 years ago. So just looking at there's some instant somewhat instant benefit from the draft. But that being said, I'm going to go with Montreal, and I'm going to say because we're into the series now. I think Montreal rallies and digs down even deeper. I think with even though he's not out on the ice, I think the likes of Burroughs as an assistant coach, this may sound a little bit strange, but hear me out. I think he, has that firsthand playing experience, being in the trenches, that big run, in 2011 for Vancouver. I just think that he's going to be able to, be a voice there and the team collectively, Price, you take that playoff, cup winning experience, Perry, Toffoli, all those guys. I mean, they knew what they were doing by getting the different guys that they got, and credit to them, Jake Allen. And I just think there's so much of that on that Montreal team that if there was any edge to Winnipeg, it's gone. And I think this hit tonight tilts the teeter-totter in favor of Montreal. I'm going to go with Winnipeg's not going to roll over. I'm going to go with, I think Calvin said 6. I'm going to say 6. Montreal in 6.
I'm going to choose, I would have chose, Winnipeg originally. And I think I'm going to keep in my pick just to not change the tide even after just one game. Even though Winnipeg most likely will be playing without Mark Scheifele, I'm going to stay with the original pick that I had. I'm going to choose Winnipeg in 6 as well. I think this series is going to be a decently long series. It's going to be a hard-fought one. And this series just begun. If Mark Scheifele is not going to get suspended, you're going to see some dirty games, which most likely he will. Just like how Kadri got suspended, and same with Reeves. Most likely Scheifele, without a doubt, will get suspended. Which now we'll pivot on to quickly onto the draft lottery. We have 2 guys in the room who are Flames and Canucks fans who were participating in this draft lottery, and we're going to let them talk about it a little bit. Also, the only thing that really happened in this draft lottery, which was a pretty uneventful draft lottery, we only seen the Seattle Kraken move up 1 pick, now picking 2nd overall, which they were originally in the 3rd spot. And Anaheim moved down a pick from 2nd to 3rd, so that was the only change that happened. So we'll send it over to Mark. He could start us off with his Calgary Flames, who will be selecting in the 12th overall spot, which would have been the 13th overall spot, but Arizona is forfeiting the pick, so Calgary moves up 1 because of that fact. So we'll move on to Kelvin.
Well, I guess since we're picking higher in the draft than the Canucks are, I mean, of course, the draft lottery, when you know your team has such a small percentage, you always have your fingers crossed that maybe there's that small strike of luck where they move up to the 2nd or 3rd pick. Like case in point, like last year where it was like, oh, well, we're going to draw for the placement teams, like the teams that are knocked out in the play-in round. It's like, well, you were kind of like, do you want to get knocked out in the play-in round and have a chance at the number 1 pick? Or do you try and make the playoffs and win the cup? And I was torn on that last year. And this year was more like, well, there isn't any of that to hope about. So it's just like you hope to get moved up in the draft. And that didn't happen for the Flames. But because of Arizona, like you said, not having their 1st round pick this year, all the teams below, technically all the teams above Arizona moved up a spot. So the Flames went from the 13th pick to the 12th pick. Not too bad. I mean, it's still kind of middle of the draft, and it's not at the deepest draft this year. And then, of course, with the COVID pandemic, scouting's been so hard. But I think that's going to improve a lot of teams' chances of finding more of a diamond in the rough, like a guy that wasn't scouted very much, but just proves to be like a dominant NHL player. Case in point, Johnny Gaudreau was he was a 4th round pick. Like, he wasn't a high draft pick. I mean, he's shown promise. He hasn't been consistent, but like, he had the most points for the Flames this year. Like, what more can you really ask in a shortened season? You'd expect him to be the points leader for sure. Of course, Monahan didn't really perform well, and the team in general didn't perform well. That's why we didn't make the playoffs and why we're in the draft lottery. But I guess to make this conversation more short, I think 12 is a fine spot for the Flames, and I do hope they find a guy that just fits what they need. Plus, you never know what Buffalo might do with that first overall pick. They might not keep it. They might not want to keep it. They might try and flip it for an asset. Who knows? Especially because this draft, you don't know what you're going to get.
All right, and I'll send it over to Mark on his Vancouver Canucks, who will be selecting in the 9th overall spot.
Yeah, I don't know enough about who's available. I mean, of course, there's the talk of the younger Hughes that's out there, and he'll probably be long gone before the Canucks get a chance at him, and whether they would even want him. I'm sure you would take him if he was available. They often say, brothers, do you want the brothers? And the Canucks have tried that a couple. Well, other than the Sedins, I'm thinking there's been a couple other situations that haven't necessarily been fruitful, Courtney brothers and things like that. So that being said, it is what it is. At least we didn't drop. I went through, did the simulator early on, and then everything seemed to, I was able to get it to come to Vancouver getting the first pick. But side note, I thought that's the weirdest rule. If Phoenix landed up in the top 2, the way I understood it is both teams, the whole thing would get thrown out and they would have to start again, which to me, if that's how I understood it, that didn't seem to make sense. But you know what? The drafting can make your team, or it can certainly give you a good boost in the coming 4 or 5 years down the road. Or as we mentioned earlier, Kotkaniemi, is in there for Montreal 3 years after being drafted. So you just don't know, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. I kind of had hoped that Vancouver would move up, but I guess the odds are that it wasn't likely to happen, and at least they didn't drop. So I don't have a lot of thought on it other than a draft is typically only going to pay you dividends. Maybe unless it's a really good draft and you've got a really good pick, you may be looking 3-4 years down the road anyways. So that's my thoughts on it.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in to another PCM hockey podcast. Thank you to Mark and Kelvin for jumping on here once again for another amazing episode. We're going to be doing another one next week, talking about the second round and maybe the potential matchups going into the conference finals, which should be super exciting as we are getting down to the March of the Stanley Cup, and who will win that, which is just going to be exciting to see who will walk home with that. And maybe it'll be a Canadian team. Most likely it probably will not, but there's a chance that could be the case. But for right now, guys, we're going to end the podcast here. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys all later. Adios, amigo.